Welcome to Army Radar Channel. We unravel history's battles and today's military actions, world wars and ongoing wars, and analyze the heroic achievements of individual soldiers to covert operations, defense forces, and armaments. Let's embark on this journey.
The U.S. Navy today is based on the M242 Bushmaster, a 25mm automatic gun developed by McDonnell Douglas engineers. It wasn't by chance that the engineers chose the M242. It was chosen for its design, which allows the chain gun to fire almost non-stop, varying its rate of fire from single shots to its maximum safe rate of fire, depending solely on how quick pressure drops in the barrel after firing, along with the mechanical endurance of the unit. In addition, the short barrel makes installation of the armament inside the turret much easier. The gun is used by the U.S. Navy on warships for defense against light surface targets as well as coastal targets. In extreme cases, it can also be used for assault. The gun has undergone a number of upgrades, resulting in an increased rate of fire, which allows for more effective use in combat. The Phalanx CIWS, also known as the Phalanx, is a ship-based anti-aircraft artillery system that entered service with the U.S. Navy slightly before the Mark 38 in 1980. The system is used by the Navy primarily to counter anti-ship missiles with supersonic and subsonic flight speeds. The Phalanx CIWS consists of the M61A1 six-barreled automatic gun, 2 radar stations, an electronic turret, control panels, barbette, and, of course, the mount on which this is all set. The Phalanx CIWS is mainly installed on U.S. Navy warships, but there is also a ground version, the Phalanx LPWS, which is being tested as part of the CRAM air defense system. It protects against missile, mortar, and artillery fire. From defensive weapons, we move on to more futuristic weapons, which you've probably already seen more than once, be it in games or movies. The laser weapon system is another type of weaponry that came straight out of science fiction, evolving from a class of imaginary technology to real and very intimidating weapons. The laser weapon was developed by ingenious engineers from Kratos Defense and Security Solutions commissioned by the U.S. Navy. The project was launched in 2007, and its main purpose was to destroy drones, small maritime vessels, fighters, and to suppress the electronic systems of air targets. In 2010, the company signed an $11 million contract to develop LAWS as part of an alternative weapons program, directed energy and electric weapon systems. As a result, a year later, the laser system was tested. It was able to successfully disarm a flying target vehicle, and in 2017, the military performed a full-scale test in the Persian Gulf. In 2014, the USS Ponce, patrolling the Persian Gulf, was equipped with a 30-kilowatt laser system. The purpose of this was to check its operability and effectiveness in the field. The main advantage, as in the case of the railgun, is the low cost of ammunition, less than $1. That said, there are several levels of firing energy, both for disabling electronics and physically damaging equipment. The Mark 45 is a versatile remote-controlled torpedo designed to hit targets at long range. The main targets of this type of torpedo are fast submarines and surface objects. The projectile is equipped with an active and passive guidance system to engage targets quickly. But the cherry on top is the multiple attack system used by the torpedo. If it suddenly loses its target, the Mark 45 will rescan the area, find its target, and attack it again. Until 2008, 7 modifications of this weapon were created. The very first version cost only $894,000, but each latest 7 Seabass projectile cost $3.8 million. The UGM-133A Trident II is a 4th-generation 3-stage American ballistic missile, and is the only representative of submarine-launched ballistic missiles in service with the U.S. Navy's SSBNs. These missiles can be found on board USS Ohio-class submarines, which can carry up to 24 Trident IIs simultaneously. These missiles currently make up for about 52% of the US strategic nuclear forces. The Trident II is capable of covering over 7,000 miles, allowing it to reach anywhere in the world. The high accuracy of the Trident effectively engages even the most hardened targets, like bunkers and intercontinental ballistic missile silos. The projectiles are notable not only for their power, but also for their combat achievements. For example, they currently hold a record for the number of successful launches in a row. And because of their high reliability, the United States plans to use them at least until 2042. Tomahawk Missile Block 5 is the latest short-range, multi-purpose, high-precision subsonic cruise torpedo modification. Development of the Tomahawks began in 1972 as part of a renewed program for cruise missiles by the US Army, which at the time was heavily impressed with the USSR's success in this field. The development resulted in the first surface flight test from the USS Merrill in 1980, and by 1982 the missile was completed. These missiles are in service with US Navy warships and submarines, although the missiles themselves were designed with land and airborne use in mind. Due to their design features, they can successfully navigate around uneven terrain. In some cases, the missiles can be used as unmanned reconnaissance vehicles equipped with additional hardware and deliver munitions or ammunition to allies in cases where delivery by other methods is impossible due to weather conditions or enemy air defense operations. One such missile costs American taxpayers $1.87 million. The SM-2 is one of the newest American anti-aircraft guided missiles in the Raytheon Standard family. Combat ships are equipped with such missiles, and today they can be seen not only in the US Navy but also among many US allies around the world. One of the main differences of the second version was the new combined guidance system. It eliminated the need for the Army to have a radar beam accompany the projectile to constantly illuminate the target throughout the missile's flight. It now tracks the target with radio corrections transmitted to the missile after the radar detects the target. The illumination itself is switched on for just a few seconds for more accurate targeting, due to which the firepower and interference immunity have been significantly improved. Missiles designed to work with the Aegis fire control system have been recently modified with a two-way communication channel between missile and delivery vehicle. Thanks to this, the military was able to control the flight of the SM-2 during its march, optimizing its trajectory and leaving its target with no chance to evade the projectile. A single SM-2 launch costs the US Navy about $409,000. SM-3. The legacy of the first versions didn't come in vain, as the American company Raytheon followed the previous versions with its next brainchild, the SM-3 surface-to-air guided missile. Like its predecessors, it is mounted on destroyers, cruisers, or assembled as ground installations. This version has its own kinetic warhead and is guided automatically by a high-resolution homing infrared warhead. It can even withstand dangerous weapons, such as ballistic missiles and interballistic missile warheads. For example, in 2001 to 2002, the missile was able to successfully intercept a simulated ballistic missile warhead at an altitude of 155 miles. And in 2020, the experiment was repeated by launching the SM-3 Block 2A, which destroyed a test target near the Hawaiian Islands. Another aspect of missile technology that has undoubtedly evolved alongside the missiles is the price. One SM-3 cost the United States a pretty penny, specifically $10 million to launch the SM-3 Block 2B. And the SM-3 Block 2A is even more expensive at $18 million. What do you think about modern weapons? Will railgun lasers be able to outlast other weapons for the foreseeable future thanks to their performance and more affordable price? What impressed you the most?
4.5 acres of sovereign and mobile American territory. That's how the US Navy describes their Nimitz-class carrier. Most people know what an aircraft carrier or a submarine is, but there are 7 categories of modern warship, which consists of aircraft carriers, cruisers, destroyers, frigates, corvettes, amphibious assault ships, and submarines. Enabling a nation with airborne operations far away from home and close to the enemy is very advantageous for obvious reasons. A single supercarrier holds enough firepower to rival the entire air forces of some nations. A carrier air wing is able to perform over 150 strike missions at once, hitting over 700 targets a day, but they can also protect friendly forces, conduct electronic warfare, assist in special operations, and carry out search and rescue missions. Supercarriers can accommodate 4,000 to 5,000 personnel, including the ship's company, air wing, and other support staff. Even though aircraft carriers do have surface-to-air missiles, guns, and other armament, they usually do not travel alone. Instead, they travel with a fleet composed of other classes of military ships called the Carrier Strike Group, which is typically made up of an aircraft carrier, at least 1 cruiser and 2 destroyers or frigates, and a carrier air wing of 65 to 70 aircraft. A carrier strike group could also on occasion include submarines, logistics ships, and a supply ship. An aircraft carrier often acts as the command platform for large battle groups or multinational task forces. Aircraft carriers traditionally ran on diesel fuel, but some of the newer aircraft carriers are nuclear-powered. Today's cruisers are primarily guided missile warships, ranging in size anywhere from 7,000 to 10,000 tons. Only the world's largest navies can afford to build and operate modern cruisers, principally the United States and Russia. In today's world, the role of the cruiser depends on the navy that it's employed in. In the US Navy, cruisers are primarily an anti-air defense vessel, while in the Russian Navy, they are anti-ship platforms. Other missions include commerce raidings and shore bombardments. Even though the US Navy at some point had a number of nuclear-powered cruisers in its fleet, they were all decommissioned in the 90s since they were deemed too expensive to build and maintain. Okay, enough cruising, let's move on to destroyers. But not for the torpedo boat destroyers, which are now just referred to as destroyers. Destroyers were protectors of the fleet, so when submarines became practical, the destroyers were equipped with depth charges, sonar, and other anti-submarine weapons and became the submarine's #1 enemy. And when the aircraft became a major threat to the naval fleet, destroyers adopted anti-air missiles. So this is how destroyers became the jack-of-all-trades among warships. Today, destroyers are the largest surface combatant operated by most navies, ranging in size up to 6,000 tons. Destroyers were fast ships, generally capable of speeds in excess of 30 knots in calm seas. But with the destroyers getting larger and more heavily armed, the difference between the cruisers and destroyers have greatly diminished. While a cruiser should nominally be bigger, this is not always the case. But a cruiser is generally considered to have greater facilities for command and control, at least in the US Navy, which often means cruisers have more space and spare energy to power the additional communication equipment and a command and control room to coordinate the defense of the fleet. Similar to destroyers, frigates are quite common ships in the Navy's fleet. They're quick to maneuver and their role is to escort and protect larger vehicles from air, surface, and underwater threats. Frigates are one of the smallest blue water surface combatants. In the past, they used to carry a lighter main battery than destroyers. For example, 3 3-inch or 2 5-inch guns would have been typical. These days, they may have anti-air guns and perhaps a small battery of torpedo tubes. However, they're not particularly well suited to theater air defense. Their strength is usually in their anti-submarine weapons. For example, the Royal Navy's Duke class of frigates have specialized anti-submarine warfare capabilities and are fitted with enhanced sonar equipment and torpedoes. Anti-submarine warfare frigates come with helipads and hangars that accommodate helicopters capable of identifying and attacking nuclear submarines using torpedoes and depth charges. Frigates are traditionally slower than destroyers, although in modern times there's not a significant difference in their speed. Today's frigates often displace up to 3,000 tons and are usually capable of top speeds of 27 to 30 knots. One of the faster frigates is the Indian Navy's Shivalik class, which can travel at speeds of up to 32 knots. Some European navies, such as the Dutch, French, German, and Spanish, use the term frigate for both their destroyers and their frigates. Vessels that are smaller than frigates are typically identified as corvettes or missile boats, which are not big enough to have a full air defense radar, and therefore are not used to escort other vessels or defend large areas. They play more of an offense role, given that they can use their anti-ship missiles to attack and are small and maneuverable enough to avoid being hit. They're also typically not suited or capable of operating in blue waters, so they typically stay closer to the shores. A missile boat is a small craft outfitted with several anti-ship missiles. They have low cost and are somewhat an outgrowth of torpedo boats from World War II. A corvette is a smaller version of a modern frigate, but it's usually geared towards one type of mission, either surface or anti-submarine warfare. The first littoral combat ship, USS Freedom, was commissioned in 2008. Littoral combat ships are a US Navy design meant to replace the Perry-class frigates. While the LCS-class ships are smaller than the frigate class that they're replacing, they offer a similar level of weaponry while requiring less than 50% of the crew. They can have a top speed that exceeds 40 knots. Littoral combat ships are smaller vessels and are well suited for littoral or close-to-shore operations. In other countries' navies, the closest thing to littoral combat ships will be patrol vessels or corvettes. One interesting feature of littoral combat ships was their modular design. They could be reconfigured for different roles, like anti-submarine warfare or surface warfare, by changing their weapon systems, sensors, and mission crews. These module changes were envisioned to happen within a few hours, but in practice they took a lot longer and proved to be logistically difficult. In a 2016 announcement, the US Navy abandoned the modular concept for littoral combat ships and decided to use them with a single module. Amphibious assault ships are used to help land and support ground forces on enemy territory. At a glance, they resemble aircraft carriers, but they're primarily designed for supporting helicopters. They can also carry vertical and short takeoff and landing aircraft. Most modern amphibious assault ships have a well deck, which is a hangar-like deck located at the waterline in the stern of the ship. When the well deck is flooded, landing craft like hovercraft can be launched and recovered without the need for a crane. A submarine, also commonly referred to as a sub, is a watercraft that's capable of independent underwater operations. Submarines typically fall into one of three propulsion categories: diesel-electric transmission, nuclear power, and air-independent propulsion. All current submarines in the US Navy are nuclear-powered, but there are a few other countries like Russia, France, the UK, China, and India which also have nuclear-powered subs in their fleet. Submarines range in size from midget submarines with a displacement of less than 150 tons to ballistic missile submarines with a displacement of up to 48,000 tons when submerged. And regardless of their size, they're all referred to as boats. There are three major types of submarines in the US Navy: attack submarines, cruise missile submarines, and ballistic missile submarines. Attack submarines use torpedoes as their main armament and have more of a multi-role mission. They're smaller in size, making them faster and more maneuverable. Cruise missile submarines are typically larger and slower boats focused on long-distance strikes using guided missiles. Ballistic missile submarines, as the name suggests, can carry and launch nuclear ballistic missiles. If you take a look at the 7 categories of warships that were just reviewed, aircraft carriers, amphibious assault ships, and submarines are quite easily distinguishable from one another, both in appearance and in the role that they play. However, the appearance and roles that cruisers, destroyers, frigates, and corvettes once had have been blurred over time. Most of them now have a mix of anti-surface, anti-submarine, and anti-aircraft weapons, and their size and displacement does not necessarily fall within the traditional class designations. It's kind of like iPhones, iPads, and iPods.
Hey you, don't miss out our next video. Hit that subscribe button for exclusive videos and join our awesome community and enjoy. Subscribe now!